For over a year, Nia became a third thread in the intricate tapestry of their lives. She was not just a fleeting presence. She was woven into their evenings, their whispered secrets, their shared vulnerabilities. She brought a youthful exuberance, a vibrant energy that rippled through the polished quiet of their home, filling it with a lightness they hadn't realized was missing. For Marcus, she was a release, an escape from the relentless pressures of his empire, a reminder of a spontaneity he'd long suppressed. For Simone, Nia was a mirror, reflecting a part of herself she'd forgotten existed, a playful, uninhibited spirit that had been subsumed by the demands of her artistic empire. Their arrangement was built on a fragile foundation of unspoken rules and carefully constructed boundaries. Discretion was paramount. No lingering traces, no casual mentions, no slips of the tongue. Their public lives remained pristine, an untouchable facade of marital bliss. But behind closed doors, in the hushed intimacy of their penthouse, Nia was a willing participant in their shared fantasy. Before we continue, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Subscribe if you haven't. There's a lot of interesting stories coming up. Now back to the story. The city lights of Atlanta sprawled beneath them, a glittering tapestry woven with ambition and desire. From their penthouse perch high above the relentless hum of the streets, Marcus Thorne and Simone Thorne were the undisputed monarchs of this urban kingdom. He, a towering figure of industry with the chiseled jawline of a Greek god and eyes that held the sharp glint of 1,000 successful deals, his tailored suits always impeccably cut, a silent testament to his meticulous nature. She, an artist whose canvases fetched millions, her rich, dark skin a luminous contrast to the pearls that perpetually adorned her neck, her smile when it came, a rare and precious thing, her laughter even more so. Their love story was the stuff of legends whispered in high society circles, a whirlwind romance that began amidst the hallowed halls of an HBCU, blossoming from shared dreams and late-night study sessions into an empire built on mutual respect, unwavering support, and a passion that burned brighter than any boardroom ambition. They were, to the outside world, the embodiment of black excellence, a power couple whose lives were as meticulously curated as Simone's most famous abstract pieces. Their home, a minimalist masterpiece of glass and steel, echoed their lives, sleek, expensive, and seemingly flawless. Yet, beneath the polished surface of their perfect world, a different narrative had been etched, one born of curiosity, vulnerability, and a moment of shared, whispered longing that had defied every boundary they'd ever known. It had begun subtly, an unspoken glance across a crowded charity gala, a fleeting touch of hands that lingered a fraction too long. Simone, always the more adventurous spirit, had suggested it, a playful dare that had escalated into something far more profound. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, had resisted at first, his mind a fortress of conventionality, but the glint in Simone's eyes, a rare spark of mischief that hinted at an uncharted territory, had slowly chipped away at his resolve. And then there was Nia, a young woman barely out of her teens, a new intern at Simone's gallery, her presence a soft melody against the Thornies' grand symphony. Nia, with her luminous, unblemished skin the color of warm honey, her eyes wide and innocent, yet holding a surprising depth, and a lithe, graceful body that moved with an almost ethereal lightness. She was a budding photographer, her talent raw but undeniable, and her admiration for Simone was palpable, a sweet and intoxicating elixir. The first invitation had been casual, a late-night work session at the penthouse, ostensibly to discuss an upcoming exhibition. The champagne had flowed freely, laughter had filled the vast, echoing space, and under the seductive spell of the city lights, the lines had blurred. What started as an experiment, a foray into uncharted emotional and physical territory, quickly became a clandestine routine. Their arrangement was built on a fragile foundation of unspoken rules and carefully constructed boundaries. Discretion was paramount. No lingering traces, no casual mentions, no slips of the tongue. Their public lives remained pristine, an untouchable facade of marital bliss. But behind closed doors, in the hushed intimacy of their penthouse, Nia was a willing participant in their shared fantasy. Her laughter echoing against the glass walls, her presence a secret heartbeat in their lives. She was compensated handsomely, of course, far beyond the typical intern's stipend, a financial incentive that further complicated the emotional currents flowing between them. But it wasn't just the money. There was a genuine connection, a strange, tangled affection that defied easy categorization. They cared for Nia in their own way, and she, in turn, seemed to adore them, particularly Simone, whom she openly idolized. The year had passed in a blur of hushed evenings and daring mornings, a period of intoxicating freedom and undeniable risk. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ended. Nia, citing a desire to pursue her photography career abroad, had gracefully exited their lives. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no tearful confessions, just a quiet understanding that the chapter was closing. Marcus and Simone, relieved but also strangely bereft, had returned to their dual solitude, the silence of their penthouse now amplified by the absence of Nia's vibrant presence. They had convinced themselves it was for the best, a risky dalliance safely concluded, their secret buried deep beneath the veneer of their perfect lives. 6 years passed, 6 years of rebuilding, of solidifying their public image, of pushing the memory of Nia and their shared secret into the furthest corners of their minds. The empire continued to flourish. Marcus's ventures expanded globally, Simone's art commanded even higher prices, and their philanthropic endeavors became even more prominent, cementing their status as benevolent titans of industry and art. Life, it seemed, had returned to its meticulously ordered rhythm, until the email arrived. It was addressed to both Marcus and Simone, a single, unassuming message in their encrypted inbox, sent from an anonymous server. The subject line was stark, chilling in its simplicity. "Remember me?" Below it, a single attachment. Marcus, ever the cautious one, scanned it for viruses, his brow furrowed in a familiar gesture of concern. Simone, her heart already quickening with a premonition she couldn't quite name, leaned closer, her breath catching in her throat as the image loaded. It was a photograph, unmistakably them, in a moment of unguarded intimacy, a stolen snapshot from 6 years ago, undeniably authentic. And standing beside them, her smile radiant, her eyes sparkling with youthful mischief, was Nia. A cold dread spread through the penthouse, chilling the opulent air. The carefully constructed fortress of their lives, built on years of calculated moves and unwavering discretion, suddenly felt flimsy, exposed. Marcus's face, usually a mask of controlled composure, paled. Simone's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that threatened to escape. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic beat of their own hearts. Their eyes met, a silent acknowledgement of the storm that had just broken. The message that accompanied the photo was brief, to the point, and utterly devoid of sentimentality. It outlined the terms: a substantial sum of money, a series of payments over the next few months, and a guarantee of their continued silence. Failure to comply would result in the public dissemination of the images and, implicitly, the ruin of everything they had built. "She's back," Simone whispered, the words barely audible, a ghostly echo of a forgotten past. Marcus slammed his fist onto the polished glass table, the sound reverberating through the vast room. How could she? After everything we did for her?" His voice was a low growl, laced with betrayal and a simmering rage. He paced the room like a caged panther, his usual strategic mind racing, desperate for a solution, a loophole, anything to regain control of a situation that had spiraled wildly out of their grasp. Simone, however, remained rooted, her gaze fixed on the image on the screen. A strange mix of fear and a flicker of something else. A lingering affection, perhaps, or a deeply buried regret. Nia looked so young, so innocent in the photograph, a stark contrast to the calculating blackmailer she had become. The immediate aftermath was a flurry of hushed phone calls to their most trusted, discreet advisors, lawyers specializing in crisis management, and cybersecurity experts who promised to trace the origins of the email. But every lead hit a dead end. The sender was untraceable, the digital breadcrumbs meticulously swept clean. Nia, it seemed, had learned a thing or two about discretion herself. The pressure mounted with each passing day. The deadline for the first payment loomed, a sword hanging over their meticulously constructed lives. The perfect facade they had maintained for so long began to show hairline cracks. Sleep became a luxury they could no longer afford. Their once vibrant conversations were replaced by tense silences, punctuated by hurried whispers about strategies and countermeasures. The easy intimacy that had defined their marriage was slowly being eroded by the corrosive fear of exposure. One evening, as the city lights twinkled mockingly outside their windows, Simone found Marcus staring blankly at the cityscape, a rare vulnerability etched on his face. "We can't let her win, Marcus," she said, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her hands. "We've worked too hard for this." He turned to her, his eyes hollow. "What choice do we have, Simone? Do we risk losing everything? Our businesses, our reputation, our legacy?" The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their precarious situation. The love that had once been their impenetrable shield now felt like another vulnerability, another weapon Nia could wield against them. The romance that had once defined them was now tinged with the bitterness of deceit and the gnawing fear of its unveiling. Their thoughts drifted back to the initial days of their arrangement with Nia. Had there been signs they missed? A flicker of ambition in her innocent eyes, a subtle shift in her demeanor, a hint of something calculating beneath her demure exterior? Or had they, in their own hubris and desire for novelty, simply been too blind to see it? They recalled the lavish gifts they had showered upon her, the opportunities they had opened for her, genuinely believing they were nurturing a young talent, perhaps even a friend. The betrayal cut deeper than just the financial demand. It was a personal affront, a violation of a trust they had, however unconventional, extended. The days crawled by, each one bringing them closer to the precipice. Marcus, in a desperate attempt to gain some leverage, tried to locate Nia through his vast network, but she had vanished without a trace, a ghost in the machine. Her social media profiles were defunct, her old contacts unreachable. It was as if she had been erased, only to reappear now as a shadow from their past, armed with their most damaging secret. Simone, meanwhile, found herself revisiting her old photo albums, looking at pictures of their early days, when their love was untainted by secrets, when their biggest worry was whether a gallery would accept her work, or if Marcus's latest venture would secure funding. The contrast was stark, almost unbearable. The carefree smiles of their younger selves were a painful reminder of the innocence they had lost, an innocence Nia had, however inadvertently, helped them shed. The first payment was due in 48 hours. The tension in the penthouse was thick, suffocating. Every news report, every social media post about them felt like a magnifying glass, scrutinizing their lives for any hint of imperfection. They felt hunted, trapped in a gilded cage. Marcus, usually decisive and in control, found himself second-guessing every move. Simone, whose artistic spirit thrived on freedom and expression, felt suffocated by the web of lies and fear that now entangled them. Their arguments, once rare and quickly resolved, became more frequent, sharper, fueled by anxiety and mutual blame. They lashed out at each other, not truly angry at one another, but at the impossible situation they found themselves in, at the shadow of Nia that loomed over their once unshakable bond. "This is your fault, Simone," Marcus had snapped one evening, his voice hoarse from lack of sleep. "You're the one who suggested it, the one who brought her into our lives." Simone had recoiled as if struck, her eyes blazing. "And you, Marcus? You were a willing participant. Don't you dare lay all the blame at my feet." The words hung in the air, stinging and raw, exposing the fissures that had begun to form beneath the surface of their perfect marriage. They quickly regretted the outburst, pulling each other into a desperate embrace, their shared fear a grim equalizer. But the words, once spoken, could not be unsaid. They were a testament to the corrosive power of the secret that threatened to consume them. The suspense built with each passing hour. Would Nia truly go through with it? Was she merely testing their resolve, or was she genuinely prepared to detonate the bomb she held in her hands? They considered reporting her, but the thought was dismissed almost immediately. The scandal would be unavoidable, the damage irreparable. They were billionaires, yes, but their power was built on an image of integrity, of moral uprightness. A public expose of their unconventional past would shatter that image irrevocably. They were caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to choose between financial extortion and professional suicide. A chilling thought surfaced in Marcus's mind. What if this wasn't just about money? What if Nia wanted something more? Revenge. A perverse sense of justice. The idea was even more terrifying than the financial demands. Money could be replaced, but reputation, once tarnished, was almost impossible to restore. He remembered Nia's fascination with Simone's art, her almost obsessive admiration. Could there be a deeper, darker motive at play? Something born of unrequited affection or a twisted sense of possessiveness? He pushed the thought away, dismissing it as paranoid delirium, a byproduct of the intense stress. The clock ticked relentlessly towards the deadline. Marcus had meticulously prepared the funds, a substantial sum wired through a series of anonymous accounts, a desperate measure to appease their blackmailer. The irony was not lost on him. The very wealth they had so painstakingly accumulated was now being siphoned away by a ghost from their past, a ghost they themselves had invited in. As the final hours dwindled, a strange calm settled over Simone. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him, seeing not just the stressed billionaire, but the man she had loved since college, the man she had built an empire with, the man who, despite their shared secret, still held her heart. Their love had been tested before, but never like this. This wasn't a business crisis or an artistic block. This was an existential threat to the very fabric of their lives. "We'll get through this, Marcus," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "We always do." He nodded, a weary smile touching his lips. "Together," he affirmed, reaching for her hand, their fingers intertwining, a silent pact against the encroaching darkness. The gesture was a flicker of their old selves, a reminder of the unbreakable bond that had survived every storm. But even as they held each other, the unspoken question hung heavy in the air. Would their love, their empire, survive this one? The first payment was made, a bitter pill to swallow. The immediate threat receded, but the relief was fleeting, quickly replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. They knew this was just the beginning. Nia had shown her hand, and they had complied. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. She held the cards, and they were at her mercy. The past, it seemed, was not content to remain buried. It had returned, not as a whisper, but as a scream, threatening to shatter the gilded cage of their perfect lives. And they knew, with a chilling certainty, that the next move was hers. The suspense, far from ending, had only just begun its agonizing dance. The immediate aftermath of the first payment was not relief, but a tightening coil of dread in Marcus and Simone's chests. The air in their penthouse, once a sanctuary of their success, now felt heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. The act of transferring the money felt like a surrender, a silent admission of vulnerability that gnawed at Marcus's typically unshakable resolve. He sat at his sprawling executive desk, the city lights a distant, uncaring blur beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of amber liquid untouched beside him. His mind, usually a finely tuned machine of strategic planning, was now a chaotic swirl of what-ifs and recriminations. He replayed every interaction with Nia, searching for a tell, a hint of the cunning that now defined her. Her youthful exuberance, her seemingly genuine adoration for Simone, had it all been a meticulously crafted facade? The thought was a bitter poison. Simone, meanwhile, found solace, or perhaps just distraction, in her art studio, a vast, sun-drenched space that overlooked the city. But even the vibrant colors on her palette seemed muted, her brushstrokes lacking their usual confident flair. She stared at a half-finished canvas, an abstract piece meant to capture the essence of joy, but all she saw was the creeping darkness of their secret. The memory of Nia, so vivid and alive in her mind, was no longer a playful shadow, but a menacing storm cloud. She remembered Nia's infectious laughter, her quick wit, the way she would look at Simone with an almost reverent admiration. It had felt so pure then, a breath of fresh air in their sometimes stifling high-stakes world. How could that innocent girl have transformed into this calculating blackmailer? The emotional whiplash was disorienting, leaving Simone adrift in a sea of conflicting feelings. There was anger, yes, but also a lingering sadness for the connection that had been, however unconventional, real. A week later, another email arrived, precise and cold as a surgeon's scalpel. No pleasantries, no veiled threats, just the next date for payment and a chillingly specific instruction. A private, encrypted chat. This was a new level of engagement, a direct line to their tormentor. Marcus felt a primal urge to refuse, to fight back, but the stakes were too high. Their carefully constructed empire, their very legacy, hung in the balance. He logged into the anonymous chat platform at the appointed time, Simone by his side, her hand gripping his arm so tightly her knuckles were white. The screen glowed with a single message. "Hello, Marcus. Hello, Simone. Did you miss me?" The casual cruelty of the message sent a jolt of ice through them both. It was Nia, undeniably. Her voice, or rather her words, resonated with a chilling familiarity. Marcus, ever the strategist, typed back, his fingers stiff. "What do you want, Nia? We've already complied." A moment of agonizing silence, then her response. "Compliance is a process, Marcus, not a one-time event. And what I want, well, that's a complex question, isn't it?" Her words were laced with an unsettling playfulness, a stark contrast to the gravity of the situation. Simone snatched the keyboard. "Nia, please, we cared about you. Why are you doing this?" She poured all her heartbreak and confusion into the message. Hoping to touch some residual empathy, Nia's reply was swift, cutting. "Cared? Is that what you call it? A paid arrangement? A little distraction for the bored billionaires? Don't flatter yourselves, Simone." The words hit harder than any financial demand, striking at the very heart of their past interactions. It was clear Nia felt exploited, used, despite the lavish compensation and their genuine, if complicated, affection. This wasn't just about money. It was about something far more personal, a deep-seated resentment that had festered for 6 years. The emotional arc of their relationship with Nia, which they had once viewed as a mutually beneficial, albeit illicit, arrangement, was now revealed to be a far darker narrative from her perspective. The love they had shared between themselves, once seemingly impenetrable, felt bruised and vulnerable under this relentless assault. The chat continued for hours, a brutal dance of accusation and justification. Nia revealed details only she could know, intimate moments, private jokes, proving beyond a doubt that it was her. She meticulously picked apart their arguments, exposing the subtle power imbalances she had felt, the underlying sense of being an outsider looking in. She painted a picture of herself as a disposable toy, easily picked up and just as easily discarded once the novelty wore off. Marcus tried to reason with her, to appeal to her sense of fairness. "Nia, we compensated you handsomely. We offered you opportunities. We thought we were helping you." Her response was a mocking laugh, represented by a series of emojis. "Help? You helped yourselves, Marcus. You indulged a fantasy, and I was merely a prop. You thought money could buy anything, even silence, didn't you?" The truth of her words, however distorted by her pain, resonated uncomfortably with them. They had been discreet, yes, but perhaps they had also been complacent, believing their wealth and influence could insulate them from any consequences. The twists and turns of this confrontation were far more agonizing than simple financial extortion. It was a psychological battle, a dismantling of their carefully constructed self-perception. As the chat concluded, Nia left them with a cryptic message. "This isn't just about money, Marcus. This is about what's owed, and the debt is far from settled." The chilling ambiguity of her statement left them reeling. What else did she want? Was there another demand beyond the financial ones? The suspense was unbearable, a constant hum beneath the surface of their lives. They tried to go about their daily routines, but every meeting felt like a performance, every public appearance a tightrope walk over an abyss. Marcus found himself scrutinizing his inner circle, wondering if Nia had an accomplice, an insider feeding her information. Simone became withdrawn, her vibrant energy dulled by the constant anxiety. One evening, Simone found an old, faded photograph tucked away in a forgotten drawer. It was of her and Marcus from their college days, young and carefree, their arms wrapped around each other, their faces alight with unadulterated joy. A sharp pang of heartbreak pierced her. They had come so far, built so much, only to have it all threatened by a mistake from their past, a mistake born of curiosity and a fleeting desire for something unconventional. She remembered the early days of their marriage, the absolute certainty of their love, the shared belief that they could conquer anything together. This felt different. This felt like a poison from within. Marcus, observing her quiet despair, pulled her into a tight embrace. "We'll get through this, my love," he whispered, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. "We'll find a way to make her stop." But a new layer of fear had begun to creep into his mind. What if Nia didn't want money at all? What if this was a slow, agonizing act of revenge, designed to systematically dismantle their lives piece by painful piece? He started hiring private investigators not to find Nia. She was too adept at disappearing, but to dig into her background, to find any weakness, any leverage they could use against her. The reports came back surprisingly thin. Nia had seemingly materialized out of nowhere 6 years ago and disappeared just as completely. She had no discernible family, no deep roots, a true ghost. This only intensified Marcus's paranoia. The second payment was due. This time, the instructions were even more intricate, involving cryptocurrency and a complex series of transactions designed to be untraceable. It was clear Nia was not only intelligent, but also had access to sophisticated resources. This wasn't the act of a desperate young woman. It was the calculated move of someone with a plan. As Marcus initiated the transfer, he felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Each payment felt like another link in a chain, binding them tighter to Nia's will. Simone, meanwhile, had begun to notice subtle shifts in Nia's messaging. Beneath the anger and the demands, There was a strange undercurrent of something else, something she couldn't quite place. Was it regret? A twisted form of longing? She remembered a particular conversation from their past, a late night in the studio where Nia had confessed her artistic struggles, her fear of not being good enough. Simone had offered her genuine encouragement, mentoring her, seeing potential where others might not have. Had that connection been entirely transactional for Nia, or had it left some deeper imprint? This emotional ambiguity only added to Simone's torment, blurring the lines between victim and perpetrator. One stormy evening, a power outage plunged their penthouse into darkness. The sudden silence, broken only by the drumming rain against the windows, felt oppressive. Marcus fumbled for his phone, its flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating their strained faces. "We can't live like this, Simone," he confessed, his voice raw. "Always looking over our shoulders, always waiting for the next attack. This isn't a life." Simone nodded, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "I know. But what else can we do? She has us, Marcus. She has everything." The weight of their shared secret, once a thrilling indulgence, had become an unbearable burden. It seeped into every aspect of their lives, poisoning their interactions, clouding their judgment, and eroding the very foundation of their love. The romance that had once defined them was now overshadowed by a chilling sense of entrapment. They clung to each other in the darkness, seeking comfort, but even their embrace felt different, tainted by the unspoken fear. The perfect image they projected to the world felt like a flimsy shield against the relentless onslaught of Nia's vengeful return. Marcus, despite his growing despair, was a fighter. He resolved to find a weakness, a chink in Nia's armor, no matter how long it took. He meticulously reviewed every detail of their past interactions with her, searching for anything, any small misstep, any inconsistency. He even revisited the initial agreement they had made, the legal documents, discreet, of course, that formalized Nia's consulting fee for her time. Was there a clause, a technicality they could exploit? But everything was airtight, designed to protect them, not ironically from the person they were paying. Simone, in a moment of desperate clarity, remembered a small, significant detail. During one of their art discussions, Nia had mentioned a specific, rare photography book, one that Simone had gifted her. It was a first edition, signed by a reclusive legendary photographer, a true collector's item. Nia had cherished it, calling it her most prized possession. Perhaps, Simone thought, there was a sentimental weakness, a human element that transcended the cold calculus of revenge. It was a fragile hope, but in the face of such overwhelming despair, any hope was a lifeline. The foreshadowing of a deeper, more complex conflict was becoming increasingly apparent. This wasn't merely a financial transaction. It was a carefully orchestrated unraveling, driven by a motive that went beyond monetary gain. The emotional arc of Nia's character, seemingly innocent and grateful, had twisted into something dark and vengeful, fueled by perceived injustice and a profound sense of betrayal. The suspense was building to a fever pitch, as Marcus and Simone realized they were no longer just dealing with a blackmailer, but with a ghost from their past who harbored a secret, deeper agenda. And as the dawn broke, painting the city in hues of silver and gray, they knew the battle for their lives, for their love, had only just begun. The next move, they understood, would be even more critical, pushing them closer to the ultimate truth about Nia and about themselves. The discovery of the signed photography book, Nia's prized possession, sparked a faint, desperate flicker of hope in Simone. It was a fragile thread, but it was something tangible, a potential key to unlocking the enigma that Nia had become. While Marcus continued to exhaust every avenue, contacting high-level private security firms and exploring discreet legal counteroffensives, all of which hit impenetrable walls, Simone decided to pursue this emotional lead. She spent hours in her vast, minimalist studio, surrounded by her own vibrant canvases, but her gaze was fixed on her tablet, scouring online art forums, rare book dealer networks, and even obscure photography collectives. She was looking for any mention of that specific book, any trace of Nia connected to her artistic passion. Her hope was that if Nia was still pursuing photography, if that book truly held sentimental value, it might lead them to her, or at least to someone who knew her current whereabouts or, more importantly, her true motivations. The tension between Marcus and Simone, though temporarily subdued by their shared purpose, simmered beneath the surface. The constant threat of exposure, the gnawing uncertainty of Nia's next move, wore on them. Their once effortless intimacy was now punctuated by hushed conversations and anxious glances. Love, which had once been their bedrock, felt like a fragile glass sculpture, constantly at risk of shattering. The emotional arcs of their individual journeys were diverging, Marcus becoming more hardened, more focused on retaliation, while Simone, despite her fear, yearned for understanding, a resolution that went beyond mere financial transaction. Days bled into weeks. The search for the book, or any digital footprint of Nia's artistic endeavors, proved fruitless. It was as if she had erased her online presence as thoroughly as she had wiped away any physical trace of herself. Frustration mounted, turning Marcus's usual drive into a restless, agitated energy. He snapped at his staff, his patience worn thin, and spent sleepless nights pacing the penthouse, his mind a whirlwind of contingency plans and worst-case scenarios. Simone watched him, her heart aching. The man she loved, once so effortlessly in control, was now a prisoner of fear and uncertainty. Then, a breakthrough, small but significant. While poring over an old niche photography blog she barely remembered following, Simone stumbled upon a comment from 6 years ago. It was a simple, enthusiastic remark about a particularly striking street photograph. The username wasn't Nia, but the tone, the specific jargon used, felt eerily familiar. She cross-referenced it with other comments on similar obscure blogs from around the same time. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to piece together a digital breadcrumb trail. The trail led her to a small, independent art gallery in Lagos, Nigeria, a place Nia had once vaguely mentioned as a dream destination for budding photographers. The gallery was known for showcasing emerging black artists from the diaspora. A surge of adrenaline coursed through Simone. Lagos. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead they had. She cautiously shared her findings with Marcus. He was skeptical at first, dismissing it as a wild goose chase. Why would she be in Lagos, Simone? This is about blackmail, not some art pilgrimage. But Simone, her artist's intuition finely tuned, felt a pull towards it. Because it was her dream, Marcus. Before us. Maybe she's still pursuing it. And if she is, maybe there's a way to reach her, to understand what she truly wants. Reluctantly, Marcus agreed. They couldn't afford to ignore any possibility. They dispatched a highly discreet team of their most trusted operatives to Lagos, masked as art collectors interested in local talent. The instructions were simple. Find Nia, observe her, and gather intelligence. Do not engage. The suspense built to an almost unbearable level as they awaited news from their team. Every phone call, every encrypted message sent their hearts racing. The geographical distance did little to alleviate their anxiety. In fact, it intensified it, adding a layer of unknown variables to an already volatile situation. The reports from Lagos began to trickle in, painting a fascinating, complex picture. Nia, it turned out, was not just there, she was thriving. She had established herself as a remarkably talented street photographer, her work gaining critical acclaim in the local art scene. Her photographs were raw, honest, capturing the vibrant pulse of Lagos life with an unflinching eye. She was running a small but successful studio, even mentoring young aspiring photographers. This revelation was a twist Marcus and Simone hadn't anticipated. She wasn't a desperate, down-on-her-luck blackmailer. She was an accomplished artist, seemingly living out the very dream she had spoken of 6 years ago. This new information threw their entire understanding of the situation into disarray. If she was successful, if she was living her dream, why the blackmail? Was it pure malice? Deep-seated resentment? The emotional arc of Nia's character, once simply a vengeful figure, became more nuanced, more perplexing. The agents also reported something else, something that sent a fresh wave of dread through Marcus. Nia was engaged. Her fiancé, a charismatic, well-respected local art curator named Tunde Adeyemi, was a rising star in the African art world, known for his integrity and his passion for promoting indigenous talent. He was a man of quiet strength, his dark eyes filled with warmth, his smile quick and genuine. He seemed deeply devoted to Nia. The news of Nia's engagement was a gut punch, particularly for Simone. It presented a new, terrifying vulnerability. Nia was building a life, a respectable life, and her fiancé was a man of influence. The stakes had just escalated dramatically. If their secret were to come out now, it wouldn't just impact Marcus and Simone. It would destroy Nia's new life, her reputation, and potentially her relationship with Tunde. This realization deepened the complexity of the situation, shifting the emotional landscape once more. It was no longer just about their survival. It was about the ripple effects of their past actions on an innocent party. Marcus, however, saw an opportunity. "This is it, Simone," he declared, a newfound steel in his voice. "Her weakness, her new life. We go to Lagos. We confront her. We expose her to him if we have to." His eyes, usually cool and calculating, now held a dangerous glint. Simone recoiled. "No, Marcus. We can't destroy her life, not like that. Think of Tunde. He's innocent in all of this." The idea of destroying someone else's happiness, especially a black couple's, felt morally reprehensible to her, a violation of a deeper, unspoken code. The heartbreak in her voice was palpable. Their argument intensified, exposing the chasm that had opened between them. Marcus, driven by self-preservation and a desire for control, saw only the threat and the means to neutralize it. Simone, wrestling with her conscience and a lingering sense of guilt, sought a more humane, albeit riskier path. The love they shared, once so harmonious, was now a battlefield of conflicting desires and moral dilemmas. He saw it as a tactical move, a necessary sacrifice. She saw it as a descent into the very darkness they were fighting against. Despite Simone's fervent objections, Marcus began making arrangements for their trip to Lagos, under the guise of an international art acquisition trip for Simone's gallery. The secrecy surrounding their journey added another layer of tension to their already strained relationship. Simone felt a profound unease, a premonition of disaster. She couldn't shake the feeling that confronting Nia directly, especially by threatening her fiancé, would only escalate the situation, pushing Nia to a point of no return. As their private jet sliced through the clouds, heading towards the vibrant, bustling continent, the silence between Marcus and Simone was heavy with unspoken fear and resentment. The opulent cabin, usually a space of shared dreams and planning, felt cold and sterile. Simone gazed out the window, watching the endless expanse of ocean below, her mind replaying every moment of their illicit past with Nia, searching for a clue, a way out that didn't involve mutual destruction. The deep romance that had always been the foundation of her life with Marcus felt distant, overshadowed by the chilling reality of their impending confrontation. Upon arrival in Lagos, the heat and vibrant energy of the city were a stark contrast to the glacial tension between them. They checked into a discreet luxury villa, its high walls and lush gardens offering little comfort. Marcus immediately set about gathering more precise intelligence on Nia's movements and Tunde's schedule. He was a man on a mission, cold and determined. Simone, however, felt a deep sense of dread. She insisted on visiting Nia's gallery first, alone, hoping to understand the woman she had become beyond the blackmailer. The gallery was a modest, charming space filled with stunning photographs that spoke of a profound connection to the human spirit. Simone moved through the exhibits, her heart aching with a complex mix of admiration and betrayal. Nia's talent was undeniable, her artistic vision even more powerful than Simone had remembered. She saw a self-portrait, Nia's eyes staring out from the frame, not with innocence, but with a raw vulnerability that struck Simone to her core. It was then, standing before that photograph, that a new understanding began to dawn on Simone. Nia wasn't just seeking revenge or money, she was seeking validation, acknowledgement, and perhaps even a twisted form of connection that had been denied to her. The heartbreak of their past was clearly still alive in Nia, morphing into this destructive act. Just as Simone was about to leave, she heard a familiar voice from the back of the gallery. "Can I help you?" It was Nia. 6 years had transformed her. She was no longer the waif-like intern, but a confident, poised woman, her short, natural hair framing a face that held both strength and a lingering shadow of pain. Her eyes, though still luminous, held a knowing depth that hadn't been there before. The moment was suspended, a charged silence between two women bound by a complex, hidden history. The twists and turns of fate had brought them face to face, not in the sterile, anonymous world of encrypted messages, but in the heart of Nia's blossoming dream. The suspense was almost unbearable. Nia's face, initially polite and professional, slowly registered recognition. Her eyes widened, a flicker of shock, then a hardening resolve. "Simone, what are you doing here?" Her voice was calm, almost too calm, betraying nothing of the storm raging within. Simone, though terrified, decided to play her hand with honesty, or as much honesty as she dared. I wanted to see your work, Nia. It's magnificent." She gestured around the gallery, her voice thick with genuine admiration. Nia scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Is that what you tell yourself? Or is this part of the blackmail, a new tactic?" The conversation that followed was fraught with unspoken accusations and raw emotion. Simone tried to appeal to Nia's humanity, her artistic spirit, the connection they had once shared. Nia, however, remained guarded, her words laced with a deep-seated anger. "You had everything, Simone. Power, money, love, and you still needed to play with lives, didn't you? To take what wasn't yours, just because you could?" Her voice rose slightly, betraying the pain she had carefully hidden for years. Simone tried to explain, to apologize, but Nia cut her off. "Apologies won't erase 6 years of living with that secret, Simone. 6 years of knowing I was a disposable fantasy." The confrontation ended abruptly when Tunde, Nia's fiancé, walked into the gallery, his face radiating warmth and pride as he looked at Nia. His presence instantly changed the dynamic. Nia's posture softened, a genuine smile gracing her lips, a stark contrast to the hard mask she had shown Simone. He was exactly as the operatives had described, handsome, kind, completely unaware of the dark secret that shadowed his fiancée's past. Simone saw the genuine love between them, and a wave of profound guilt washed over her. She couldn't bring herself to shatter this. "My dear, is everything all right?" Tunde asked, his gaze lingering on Simone, a polite but curious question in his eyes. Nia quickly composed herself. "Yes, darling. Just an old acquaintance from the States, here to admire my work." She introduced Simone with a forced casualness that didn't escape Simone's notice. Simone shook Tunde's hand, her mind racing, 1,000 possibilities flashing through her head. She could expose Nia right then, detonate the bomb, and watch Nia's world crumble. But looking into Tunde's honest, trusting eyes, and seeing the genuine affection between him and Nia, she couldn't do it. Not yet. The love she witnessed, pure and untainted, was a reflection of what she and Marcus cherished, and the thought of destroying it felt monstrous. As Simone left the gallery, promising to return, she felt a profound sense of foreboding. The confrontation had not yielded the easy resolution Marcus had hoped for. Instead, it had deepened the emotional complexity of their predicament, adding a layer of moral ambiguity they hadn't anticipated. She knew now that Nia wasn't just a blackmailer. She was a wounded woman, and her actions were rooted in a pain they had inadvertently inflicted. The choice was clear: follow Marcus's path of ruthless self-preservation, or find a way to untangle this web of secrets and pain without destroying innocent lives. The suspense, the emotional stakes had never been higher. The fate of two couples, two love stories, now hung precariously in the balance, intertwined by a single devastating secret. Simone returned to the villa, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The confrontation with Nia, brief and fraught as it was, had solidified her belief that a direct, aggressive approach would only lead to more destruction. She found Marcus in the living area on a video call, his voice low and intense, clearly strategizing with one of his security consultants. He ended the call, his gaze sharp, expectant. "Well, what did you find?" he demanded, his impatience palpable. Simone recounted her visit to Nia's gallery, emphasizing Nia's obvious talent and the genuine connection she shared with Tunda. She spoke of Nia's pain, her belief that she had been used. "Marcus," Simone pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. "She's not just some opportunist. She's hurt, and she has built a beautiful life here. We can't destroy it. We can't expose her to Tunde." Marcus scoffed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Hurt? Simone, she's blackmailing us. She wants to ruin us. And you're worried about her feelings? This is business. This is about self-preservation." His eyes hardened. "We have to take her down before she takes us down. The threat to Tunde is leverage. It's the only thing that will make her stop." The argument escalated, their voices rising, echoing through the spacious villa. The romantic bond that had once seemed unbreakable now felt stretched to its limit, fraying under the immense pressure. Simone accused Marcus of ruthlessness, of losing sight of their own humanity. Marcus accused Simone of naivete, of putting sentimentality above their very survival. The love that had once been their greatest strength now seemed like another vulnerability, another point of friction. The heartbreak was evident in every sharp word exchanged, every frustrated gesture. "You're forgetting who we are, Marcus," Simone cried, her voice trembling. "We built our empire on integrity, on respect. What good is all of this if we become monsters in the process?" "And what good is it if it all crumbles because you're too sentimental to fight back?" he retorted, his jaw clenched. "This isn't some abstract painting, Simone. This is real life, and our lives are on the line." Their clash ended in a tense silence, a chasm opening between them. Marcus, fueled by a simmering rage and a desperate need for control, decided to push forward with his plan. He instructed his operatives to subtly gather more information on Tunda, to find any vulnerability they could exploit without directly involving him, yet his intent was clear. The threat of exposure remained his ultimate weapon. Simone, meanwhile, felt a profound sense of isolation. She loved Marcus deeply, but she couldn't reconcile his cold, calculated approach with her own conscience. She spent sleepless nights staring at the ceiling, the Lagos heat oppressive, her mind racing, searching for an alternative. There had to be a way to protect their secret, to protect their life, without destroying Nia's. She kept returning to the self-portrait she'd seen in the gallery, the raw vulnerability in Nia's eyes. It was a glimmer of the girl they had known, a flicker of humanity beneath the hardened exterior of the blackmailer. The next day, Simone decided to act independently. She sent Nia a message through the anonymous chat, a message Marcus knew nothing about. Instead of threats or pleas, she wrote, "Nia, I saw your work. It's breathtaking. The self-portrait, it spoke to me. I understand your pain. Can we talk? Truly talk? Without demands or threats? Just two women? Artist to artist? The hours that followed were agonizing. Simone braced herself for a mocking reply, or worse, no reply at all. But then, a message appeared. Meet me tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., the old fishing village pier outside the city. Come alone. If you bring anyone, it's over. The message was curt, but it was an opening, a ray of hope in the suffocating darkness. Simone knew the risks were immense. Nia could be setting a trap, or it could be a desperate attempt to truly connect. She told Marcus she was going for a walk, leaving him preoccupied with his own plans. As she left the villa in the pre-dawn light, she felt a mixture of fear and a strange sense of purpose. This was her chance, her only chance to find a different path, to salvage something from the wreckage of their past. The suspense was almost unbearable as she drove through the waking city. The pier was deserted, bathed in the soft glow of the rising sun. The salty air carried the scent of the ocean and distant cooking fires. Simone waited, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Then she saw her. Nia, dressed simply, her face devoid of the professional mask, looked almost fragile in the early morning light. Her eyes, however, held a wary intensity. "You came," Nia stated, her voice quiet, almost a whisper. "You asked," Simone replied, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. They stood in silence for a long moment, the sounds of the waking village slowly filling the air around them. Finally, Simone spoke, her voice raw with emotion. "Nia, I am truly sorry for the pain we caused you. We were selfish, careless. We saw you as an experience, not a person with your own dreams and feelings. We were wrong." She paused, taking a deep breath. "The money. It's not enough, is it? This isn't just about money for you." Nia's eyes, which had been fixed on the horizon, slowly turned to Simone. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. Pain, anger, perhaps even a hint of surprise at Simone's directness. "No, Simone, it was never just about the money. The money is payment for the years I spent feeling like I was nothing more than a secret, a dirty little secret you could discard whenever you pleased. For the way I started to question my worth, my art, everything, because of you." Her voice was low, devoid of the earlier mocking tone, laced instead with a profound bitterness. "I built my life back here," Nia continued, gesturing vaguely towards the bustling city in the distance. "I found love. I found my purpose. But the shadow of your secret, of that year, it never truly left me. Every time I saw a news article about the perfect Thorne couple, it was a fresh wound. I wanted you to feel a fraction of what I felt. I wanted you to know what it was like to live with a secret that could destroy everything." This was the emotional arc of Nia's story, laid bare, revealing the depth of her heartbreak and resentment. Simone listened, her heart aching. The honesty was brutal, but it was also a revelation. This wasn't pure malice. It was deep-seated trauma, a desperate attempt to reclaim a sense of power and self-worth that had been stripped away. "I understand," Simone whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "But destroying your new life, Tunde's life, will that truly heal you, Nia? Will it erase the past or just create more pain?" Nia flinched at the mention of Tunde, her carefully constructed composure cracking. Her gaze darted away, towards the distant horizon. "He doesn't know," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "And I don't want him to know. He's everything to me." The raw vulnerability in her voice was a sharp twist in the narrative, revealing her own fear and the stakes of her secret. This was the opening Simone had been desperately searching for. "Then let's find another way," Simone urged, stepping closer. "A way that protects everyone. A way to give you peace. and to allow us to move forward without this constant threat. What would it take, Nia, for you to truly let this go? Not just the money. What do you truly need to heal? Nia hesitated, her eyes scanning Simone's face, searching for sincerity. The raw emotion in Simone's gaze seemed to reach her. I need to know you genuinely regret it. That you see me as a person, not just a memory. I need to know that you understand the damage you caused. Her voice was laced with a complex mix of anger, vulnerability, and a longing for genuine acknowledgement. And I need a guarantee, an absolute ironclad guarantee that this secret will never surface. Not from you, not from Marcus, not ever. Simone nodded, her heart swelling with a fragile hope. I can give you that, Nia. I truly can. And I will make sure Marcus understands. He will understand. She knew it would be a battle to convince him, but she was prepared to fight. This was about more than money. It was about redemption, about protecting the innocent, and perhaps about salvaging the love that she and Marcus shared, a love that was being corroded by the bitterness of their past. And there's one more thing, Nia said, her voice dropping, almost conspiratorial. The first set of photos, they were just the beginning. I have more, far more, and they're not just photos. The chilling implication hung in the air, a new layer of suspense and foreshadowing. The twists and turns were far from over. This wasn't just about images. It was about something deeper, something potentially even more damaging. As the sun fully emerged, casting a golden glow over the pier, Simone felt a strange mix of relief and renewed fear. She had opened a dialogue, found a glimmer of humanity in Nia's vengeful exterior, and discovered a new, terrifying secret. The threat had not vanished. It had merely evolved, and the journey to true resolution, to protecting their love and their lives, had just become even more perilous, fraught with unforeseen emotional and practical challenges. The next move would be crucial, demanding an honesty and vulnerability that had long been absent from their perfectly curated lives. The revelation on the pier hit Simone like a physical blow. More than just photos. The words echoed in her mind as she drove back to the villa, the early morning light of Lagos feeling heavy and oppressive. Nia's admission of having more, and not just images, was a chilling twist she hadn't anticipated. It suggested something far more insidious, something that could inflict damage beyond public humiliation. Her mind raced through possibilities. Recordings, diaries, financial ledgers detailing illicit transactions designed to obscure their past dealings with Nia. The suspense of the unknown was almost unbearable. Back at the villa, Marcus was pacing, his anger a palpable force. "Where were you, Simone? I was worried sick." His relief quickly turned to frustration as she recounted the meeting, omitting, for the moment, the chilling detail about more than just photos. He listened, arms crossed, his expression a mixture of skepticism and grudging acknowledgement of her initiative. "So she's hurt, and she wants an apology? That's her price?" Marcus scoffed. "Simone, this is a calculated act. She saw an opening, and she's exploiting it. We can't trust her. She's manipulating you." He was unconvinced, his strategic mind still fixed on a confrontational approach. The love they shared, usually a source of unwavering support, was now strained by their fundamental disagreement on how to handle Nia. Their emotional arcs, once intertwined, were now pulling in opposing directions. "No, Marcus," Simone insisted, her voice firm despite her exhaustion. "It's more complex than that. She's genuinely wounded and she wants to heal, and she wants a guarantee of absolute silence, not just from us, but forever." She knew she had to convince him, for their sake, and for the sake of their marriage. The heartbreak of their current situation, the threat of their empire crumbling, was a constant, gnawing pain. The argument continued, long and exhaustive, pushing them to the brink. Simone articulated Nia's pain, the sense of being discarded, the deep-seated resentment that had festered for years. She painted a vivid picture of Nia's new life, her genuine love for Tunde, and the catastrophic impact their retaliatory actions would have. She appealed to his own sense of justice, however warped it might be in this context, and reminded him of the love they shared and the values they had built their empire upon. Finally, exhausted and seeing the unwavering resolve in Simone's eyes, Marcus relented, albeit begrudgingly. "All right," he conceded, his voice hoarse. "If you truly believe this is the only way to make her back down permanently without destroying her new life or ours, then we try it. But if she double-crosses us, Simone, if this backfires, then my way. No more games. Understood?" His jaw was tight, his eyes still holding a dangerous glint of mistrust, but it was a concession, a small victory for Simone. Their deep romance, though tested, seemed to have found a fragile compromise. The next few days were a blur of intense planning. Marcus, despite his reservations, threw himself into the task with his usual meticulousness. They drafted a comprehensive, legally binding non-disclosure agreement, ironclad and designed to protect Nia's secret with Tunde and their own. It included substantial financial provisions for Nia, not as blackmail payments, but as a genuine investment in her art, framing it as a philanthropic initiative to support emerging African artists. This would allow Nia to maintain her pride and integrity while still receiving compensation that, in a twisted way, acknowledged the debt she felt they owed her. The twist was in how they presented it, as a reconciliation, not extortion. The meeting was arranged for 2 days later, again at the pier, but this time Marcus would be present. Simone was filled with trepidation. She knew this was the ultimate test. If Marcus's cold demeanor or Nia's lingering resentment fractured the delicate truce, everything could unravel. The suspense was almost unbearable. As they approached the pier, the morning sun glinted off the calm waters of the Atlantic. Nia was already there, her posture rigid, her face a carefully guarded mask. Tunde was nowhere in sight, a clear indication that Nia was still protecting her secret. Marcus, tall and imposing, walked beside Simone, his face unreadable. The initial moments were fraught with tension. Marcus, true to his word, refrained from aggression. He spoke calmly, concisely, outlining the terms of the new agreement. He acknowledged the pain they had caused, expressing a carefully worded apology that, while perhaps not as emotionally resonant as Simone's, carried the weight of his undeniable sincerity. "Nia," he said, his voice surprisingly gentle, "what we did was thoughtless and selfish. We exploited a dynamic that was inherently unequal. We deeply regret the impact it had on you." It was a profound statement for Marcus, a man rarely given to public displays of vulnerability, let alone admissions of fault. Simone squeezed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of his effort. Nia listened, her eyes flickering between Marcus and Simone, searching for insincerity. Her initial defensiveness slowly began to recede, replaced by a cautious curiosity. She picked up the legal document, reading through it carefully, her brow furrowed. The financial figures were significant, more than she had initially demanded in blackmail, and the terms for artistic support were remarkably generous. This was not a ransom, it was an investment. This unexpected twist visibly softened her demeanor. "And the photos?" Nia finally asked, her voice low. "The other things?" It was the moment of truth. Simone took a deep breath. "Nia, we propose a new beginning. We want you to hand over all copies, physical and digital, of anything related to our past, not as a threat, but as a symbol of trust, of moving forward. And in return, we give you our absolute, unwavering guarantee. We will never speak of this again. Our past will remain buried. Simone's words were sincere, heartfelt, filled with the deep romance and love she wanted to preserve within her own marriage. Nia was silent for a long moment, the only sounds the gentle lapping of waves against the pier and the distant cries of gulls. The decision weighed heavily on her. She held all the cards, the power to destroy their lives with a single click. But she also held the burden of her own secret, the fear of losing Tunde and the deep, persistent wound of her past. Finally, she looked up, her gaze meeting Simone's. "There's one more thing," Nia said, her voice barely a whisper. "I want to display the self-portrait in my gallery for a month, as a statement of my journey. And you," she looked directly at Simone, "I want you to write the foreword for the exhibition, an anonymous one, about resilience and the power of art to heal. A testament." It was a bold request, a twist that Simone had not foreseen. It wasn't about money or revenge. It was about acknowledgement, about reclaiming her narrative, and about a form of artistic collaboration that transcended their complicated history. It was a subtle yet profound act of reconciliation. Marcus, ever the businessman, saw the strategic advantage. It would publicly cement their support for her art, providing an irrefutable alibi for any future inquiries about their connection. He nodded almost imperceptibly at Simone, giving his silent approval. "Done," Simone replied, her voice thick with emotion. A fragile truce had been forged, not just with words, but with a silent understanding, an acknowledgement of shared humanity and mutual vulnerability. Nia, with a profound sigh, reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek, encrypted hard drive, along with a stack of physical photos, negatives, and a small, leather-bound journal. "Everything," she stated, her voice quiet but firm, handing them to Marcus. "All copies, digital and physical. The journal, it's the other things I mentioned." Marcus took them, his hand trembling slightly. This was it, the evidence that could have shattered their lives, now in their possession. He immediately handed them to his security chief, who had been discreetly waiting in a nearby car with instructions to immediately destroy all copies, leaving no trace. "And your phone?" Marcus asked, his gaze fixed on Nia. Nia nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. She pulled out her burner phone, its screen dark, and handed it over. "All communications," she said. "Everything erased." As Marcus's security chief drove off with the evidence, a wave of immense relief washed over Simone. The immediate threat had passed. The emotional arc of this part of their story had found a tenuous resolution, but the quiet moment on the pier was pregnant with unspoken thoughts. The years of secret-keeping had taken their toll. The romance between Marcus and Simone, though surviving, had been irrevocably changed, tested by the crucible of fear and betrayal. As for Nia, she stood alone on the pier, watching them go. A solitary figure, perhaps lighter, perhaps more at peace, but forever marked by the complex history she shared with the powerful couple. The suspense of their confrontation had dissipated, but the echoes of their shared past would undoubtedly linger. The twist, the unexpected human connection that had driven Simone's actions, had averted disaster, but it had also revealed a deeper, more complicated truth about the nature of forgiveness and redemption. Their love, their empire, had survived, but at a cost. They knew that the healing, for all of them, had only just begun. The flight back to Atlanta was quieter than the journey to Lagos, but the silence between Marcus and Simone was different now. It wasn't the strained, resentful quiet of conflict, but a contemplative one, tinged with exhaustion and a fragile sense of relief. The weight of the secret, though still a part of them, felt lighter, less suffocating. The hard drive and the journal, now destroyed, had been the physical manifestations of their vulnerability, and their eradication felt like a purging. Yet the emotional scars remained, a testament to the twists and turns of their entanglement with Nia. Marcus, usually quick to dive back into work, found himself staring out at the clouds, his thoughts uncharacteristically far from boardroom strategies. He replayed the scene on the pier, Nia's raw honesty, and Simone's unwavering resolve. He realized with a clarity that stung that his initial instinct to crush Nia had been a short-sighted one, a reaction born of fear and a need for control. Simone's empathetic approach, while terrifyingly risky to him at the time, had ultimately secured a more complete and perhaps even a more permanent resolution. The deep romance he shared with Simone, which he sometimes took for granted amidst the demands of his empire, had been their true compass, guiding them through the moral labyrinth. This shared experience had deepened their bond, forging a new layer of trust and understanding. Simone, meanwhile, felt a profound sense of emotional fatigue, but also a quiet pride. She had faced her own fears, confronted the consequences of their past actions, and, against Marcus's initial judgment, had found a path toward a resolution that didn't leave a trail of destruction. Her heartbreak over Nia's pain was still there, but now it was tinged with the hope of her healing. The prospect of writing the foreword for Nia's exhibition, an anonymous testament to resilience, felt like a symbolic act of redemption, a way to honor Nia's journey, and perhaps, in a small way, to atone for their part in her pain. Back in Atlanta, life slowly resumed its opulent rhythm, but it was subtly altered. The penthouse, once a symbol of their untouchable perfection, now felt more like a home that had weathered a storm, its polished surfaces holding a new kind of depth. Marcus was more present, more attuned to Simone's emotions, his gestures of affection more deliberate, imbued with a newfound appreciation for her strength and wisdom. Their conversations, no longer dominated by whispered anxieties, returned to their shared passions, their plans for the future, and the love that had always been their anchor. Simone immersed herself in writing the foreword for Nia's exhibition. She poured her heart into the words, crafting a narrative that spoke of the transformative power of art, the resilience of the human spirit, and the beauty that could emerge from pain. She wrote of how a single image could capture a soul's journey, and how an artist's vision could heal both the creator and the beholder. The anonymity of the piece allowed her to be truly honest, to weave in elements of their shared, unspoken history without revealing its scandalous details. It was a cathartic process, a way to process her own emotional arc through the lens of Nia's artistic triumph. Weeks later, a package arrived from Lagos. It contained a beautifully bound catalog from Nia's exhibition. Simone's foreword was printed anonymously on the first page, just as she had requested. The photographs within were even more striking than she remembered, especially Nia's self-portrait, which held a profound sense of self-acceptance. A small handwritten note was tucked inside. "Thank you, Simone, for seeing me." It was unsigned, but Simone knew it was from Nia. The simple words spoke volumes, a testament to the fragile bridge they had built between them. It wasn't forgiveness, perhaps, but it was a step towards it, a recognition of their shared humanity. Marcus watched Simone as she read the note, a soft smile gracing her lips. He knew what it meant to her, and by extension, to them. The emotional tension that had gripped them for so long was finally easing its hold. The suspense of Nia's blackmail had faded, replaced by the quiet understanding of a complex human story. The twist in their tale wasn't the revenge they had feared, but an unexpected path to a deeper form of reconciliation. Life continued, full of the usual demands of their high-profile existence. Marcus launched a new philanthropic initiative focused on empowering young entrepreneurs in developing countries, a project that, subconsciously perhaps, mirrored Nia's own journey. Simone continued to create art that resonated with deeper emotional truths, her canvases reflecting a newfound complexity and vulnerability. Their public image remained pristine, untarnished by the tempest they had privately weathered. The secret of their past with Nia remained just that, a secret buried deep within the confines of their memories. But the experience had left an indelible mark on their deep romance. They were more appreciative of each other, more aware of the fragility of their carefully constructed world, and more committed to their shared values. The flirtation with the unconventional had nearly cost them everything, and the near heartbreak had served as a powerful, albeit painful, lesson. They held on to each other tighter now, their love fortified by the storm they had overcome. The emotional arcs of their lives, once seemingly on a perfect trajectory, had dipped into darkness, only to emerge stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected. The occasional news report about Nia's burgeoning career in Lagos would surface, a small article in an international arts magazine, a mention of her growing influence. Each time, Marcus and Simone would exchange a knowing glance, a silent acknowledgement of the woman who had, in a strange and painful way, changed their lives forever. She was no longer a blackmailer, but a reminder of their shared vulnerability, their capacity for error, and ultimately, their resilience. One quiet evening, as they sat on their penthouse balcony overlooking the glittering expanse of Atlanta, Marcus took Simone's hand. "We almost lost it all," he murmured, his voice low. "Everything we built, everything we are." Simone leaned her head on his shoulder. "But we didn't. We found our way back. And in a strange way, Marcus, she helped us see ourselves, truly see us, and what matters most." She squeezed his hand. "Our love, always." He turned to her, his eyes reflecting the city lights, and for the first time in a long time, the shadow of Nia was gone. Only the profound, enduring love between them remained, a love that had faced its darkest hour and emerged against all odds, unbroken. The suspense had ended not with a bang, but with the quiet understanding that the deepest truths often lay buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed, and that even the most perfect lives could hold a secret that, once confronted, could lead to unexpected growth and a stronger, more resilient bond. The story of their love, their empire, and their encounter with a ghost from the past would remain a private chapter, a testament to the complex, unpredictable nature of human connection and the enduring power of second chances.